Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Today we're going to go ahead and talk about the Constitution. We kind of told you or left you hanging at the end of Shays' Rebellion about the Constitution, about the Articles of Confederation, and is anything going to change from the Articles of Confederation? Well, yes, we told you that the Constitutional Convention gets together to try to change or try to rearrange that articles to try to make it a more stronger government. In 1787, Philadelphia, these group of delegates get together called the Constitutional Convention, and their goal was to improve the Articles of Confederation. Let's not change anything. Let's not get drastic. Let's just go ahead and change it up to where it's better. That's what we could do. So they had this list, and they're like, yeah, that's not good. Let's cross that out, and let's do that. Yeah, that's not good either. Let's cross that out. Let's do that. No. Okay, you know what? Let's start all over. So instead of trying to revise the articles, they went ahead and created the Constitution. The goal of the Constitution was try to fix those errors that the articles had. The Articles was weak. Remember, Shays' Rebellion really made Americans see how weak the Articles were. And this group of men, like James Madison, Ben Franklin, George Washington, got together to try to create a better form of government. So when you're talking here now, what does the Constitution do? Remember what the Articles: one state, one vote, one legislature, couldn't do much, right? So the Constitution is designed to balance the power among the now three branches of government. All right. These series of checks and balances are put in place to make sure that one of these branches cannot become too powerful, because if it did, it would be like a monarchy, and that is a bad word in the new American English language. Monarchy, bad, right? So what does it do? The Constitution creates these three branches of government with the series of checks and balances to make them so they're not too powerful above one another. Now, what are these branches? The legislative branch. These are the people who make the laws. The executive branch. These are the people who carry out the laws. And the judicial branch. These are the people who interpret the laws. So these are now three branches of government coming from the one branch of government previously. So now we start having some different ideas into this Constitution to be able to make things happen. So who is in each branch, right? So the legislative branch, that's Congress. They have the power to pass bills into law. Then you have the executive branch. The president can veto the laws that were passed. So Congress could say, we're passing this, and the president could say, veto, send it back and redo it. It's not just the president in the executive branch, his cabinet's in the executive branch, and so is the vice president. They are all located in the executive branch. Think about a CEO of a company, the chief executive officer of a company. The president would be like the chief executive officer of the United States. Okay, so the executive branch. The last branch we're going to cover is the judicial branch. Now, the judicial branch is the court system, the Supreme Court. Think about a judge. Where does a judge work? The judge works in a court, right? So the judicial branch is the judges, the Supreme Court of the United States. They can strike down laws for being unconstitutional. If a law somehow passed that was like, hey, everybody who wears white shoes is going to get taxed $1 million every time they wear it, the judicial branch is going to be like, probably unconstitutional, right? No good, sorry. So those are the three branches of government. Who's in the three branches of government? Now remember, each one of those branches cannot become more powerful than the other branch. They're there to equal each other out, level each other. That's what those series of checks and balances do. Now, look at here, the weakness of the articles and everything that was fixed with the Constitution. The biggest one right there, Congress had no power to levy or collect taxes. Fixed with the Constitution. We can now collect taxes. That's a big one. You could see Congress had no power to regulate trade, no power to enforce its laws. Remember those laws? 13 states needed to amend the articles, none. Approval of 9 states were needed to enact the laws, very few, but there were some. The government had no executive branch, so we had no president. There was no national court system, so the Constitution winds up fixing all of these. All right, so the ratification of the new Constitution was not easy. Remember, we had the fights between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, the North and the South, the businessmen and the farmers. So a couple of these businessmen got together, and it happened to be Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison. What they did is they wrote something that we call the Federalist Papers. And these Federalist Papers were a series of 85 essays supporting the Constitution. And these papers were sent out to these newspapers around the country, influencing people to say, hey, you should vote for this Constitution because it's not the federal government is not going to overpower the states. So they don't write them under their names. They write them under pseudonym names like Plubius, and they post them in these papers. 85 essays in which Hamilton winds up writing the majority of them. That's how passionate he was about getting the Constitution passed. So what exactly is the Constitution? The Constitution is our government. It creates a set of rules or laws that people and the government must follow. It is our laws, right? They are our laws, if that makes sense. It is actually nicknamed the supreme law of our land. Okay, so this Constitution broke down in articles and amendments, sat down and told us how we are to run a government and how we are to run a nation. The first 3 words in the Constitution tells us who has the power. We, the people. We have the power. How do we have the power? That doesn't make sense because, I don't have the power to go out there and do anything. Well, you kind of do in the United States. We live in what we call a popular sovereignty. And what a popular sovereignty is when the people rule. The people have the power. But how do people have the power? We vote in our representatives. That's how we have the power. You don't like somebody, you don't have to put them in power. You just get a whole bunch of people not to vote for them. They don't win. You vote for somebody else, they win. That's how you have the power. You vote for who you want to represent you. That's what a popular sovereignty is. We are a popular sovereignty because of our Constitution. And the Constitution also created a balance of power called federalism. What's federalism? Federalism is the idea that the government of the United States and the states share powers. Federalism, it's not a federalist, it's not federal, it's not this, it's not that. Federalism is the idea that the states and the federal government share powers. What does that mean? Well, I can get a passport from the United States of America. I can also get an ID, a state ID from the state of North Carolina, right? The U.S. mail is a federal service. A driver's license is a state service, right? So the government, the federal government, and the state's government share powers, because if they cannot share powers, nothing would ever get done. If you think the government's slow now, forget it. Can you imagine if you had to drive to Washington, D.C. to get your driver's license? Oh my gosh, I couldn't even think about that. So the state, for whatever the government cannot control, whatever they cannot do, they allot to the states. So the states and the government share powers under the Constitution. Each state needed to ratify the Constitution, become law. As you can see, every state except for Rhode Island held a convention to go ahead and ratify it. Delaware, they're so proud they were the first state. They put it on their license plate, and Rhode Island was the last state in 1790. That's what you get for not having a convention, peoples. New York and Virginia debated for a while, but we knew we needed both of those states. Both of those states actually wind up ratifying the Constitution, and we have a Constitution of the United States. We have our laws. And here is a quick picture. Articles of Confederation, the first government. We have the Constitution, which is our government that we have today. It's living, it's breathing. It can change today if we wanted it to. We can put an amendment in it as long as it passes and gets voted in there. So that's the importance of the Constitution, right? It is living and breathing. It is something that can change continuously. And you see over there on the right-hand side, I guess that's supposed to be little James Madison holding the Bill of Rights. That's actually kind of funny. We're going to go ahead and get into the Bill of Rights. This was just a brief, really dive in about the Constitution, our laws of our land. I can't think of anything good to say. Signing off.